before we get started, let's look at this.
French President Francois Hollande's first press conference of the new year was overshadowed by his alleged affair with actress Julie Gaillet. Media wanted to know if his partner, Valérie Trierweiler, was still the First Lady of France.
I have a single principle, which is that private matters are dealt with in private, in a privacy that respects everyone. This is therefore neither the place nor the time to do it.
Hollande refused to answer the question, but he did say he would provide one before a February state visit to the US, a trip that would normally include Trierweiler. Widespread attention has been focused on the supposed love affair of the 59-year-old president since the French magazine Closer published photographs of a man, said to be Hollande, wearing a helmet and sneaking away from the Élysée Palace on a scooter to meet his alleged girlfriend. Some French observers think that although the publicity may have made the socialist president look more human, it's also made him seem a bit ridiculous in the eyes of the public.
The fact is that this is the most unpopular president in the history of the Fifth Republic. And he wanted to impress the French with the fact that he was a normal man, that he was a man of dignity, simplicity, moral rigor. And suddenly the French are discovering that he is like others, but in a less glorious manner, in nearly a more ridiculous manner.
But inside France, it seems people are not treating it as a big deal.
No, we are not interested in the details. It is part of his private life, but he should behave with more delicacy.
Who is the First Lady? We should just cancel the status of First Lady. We elect a President of the Republic, or a woman tomorrow may be, but not a First Lady.
In France, the media faces strict privacy laws. The latest revelations prompted questions about public figures' right to privacy and whether life can remain personal for someone with round-the-clock bodyguards. 6 years ago, when France's former president, Nicolas Sarkozy, married model Carla Bruni soon after divorcing his second wife, his popularity slumped. Former US President Bill Clinton faced moves to impeach him following the sex scandal involving White House intern Monica Lewinsky. Hollande is luckier. Recent polls showed his popularity has improved slightly since the alleged affair became news. But critics say it's still not clear how much impact the story could have on his political fortunes.
Welcome to the studio discussion here today. The topic is very sexy. It's the affair that Monsieur Hollande has developed with the actress Julia Gaillet. Now, Hollande's approval rating has improved a little bit after the news broke of the alleged affair, ironically and surprisingly. Is it normal for you?
Well, I mean, his approval rating in November was the lowest in modern French history. So it was at 15% and went up to something like 22% now. But you're right. I mean, his approval rating has not changed since this so-called affair has been brought to light. Is it unusual? For the American public, it's unusual.
What about the Italians?
I think that historically, Italians don't care. Actually, I remember there is also a case in Germany where the approval rate went up when a politician was known to have extramarital affairs. I think we continental people are more lenient on sexual scandals.
Sebastian, what's the attitude of French males instead of the females who seem to have developed a more indifferent attitude towards the private life of the president? What about the males?
A good question. I think we have to make a difference between the public person, François Hollande, which is the French president, and the man who has a private life. So I think it's very common nowadays to have affairs. It's not something new. A lot of people has affairs, common people has. But what is very new for us, it's like this private affair has become publicly. It was revealed by a magazine. So this is the main difference. But as a guy, as a man, this is nothing special for me.
Let's look at the immediate response from Nicolas Sarkozy, former French president, who seemed to be hilarious upon hearing this news. He laughed at the photo report about Monsieur Hollande coming out of the place of his mistress, Julia Gaget, saying he's a ridiculous president. Does that mean he's going to make a political comeback and get back to Élysée Palace?
Yeah, well, it's a long time. I mean, the election, I think, is for 2017. But I mean, I think he took an opportunity to take a jab at his opponent, of course, and to somebody he lost to. His point is not so misplaced, because I mean, the truth is that the allegation is that Hollande has actually took a motor scooter to his to the apartment where he was having a relationship with the Gaillet, and there was only one bodyguard present at the time, and they actually sent the bodyguard out to get some croissants for them. So I mean, this idea of a president of a country and a national security being compromised, that he's on this motor scooter with one bodyguard, it's a bit ridiculous. I mean, I do see what
Sorry, I can't precisely pronounce the name of Monsieur Hollande's first girlfriend, or supposedly the first lady, but she's currently in hospital. Well, a poor lady, but what do you think of her alleged attitude, which is she might as well forgive her boyfriend for this ridiculous affair?
Well, I think what is interesting to me in all this issue is we have, in a way, we continental Europe have been, in a way, being spread by this attitude about sex. In the past, in France, in Italy, in Germany, in Spain, many politicians had extramarital affairs, like sexual life, very private sexual life, and the Secret Service collaborated one way or another, covering up. But now, all of a sudden, these have become political issues. Why? How come? This to me is very strange, but perhaps, going back to your first question, is that this has not really touched or have a great impact on his approval rate. And at least Hollande will go on being a president or will fail being a president on the economics, not because of his girlfriends.
Sebastian, let's look at the presidents in your history. Now, late French President Francois Mitterrand was also said to have a reputation maintaining girlfriends. And his mistress, as well as daughter of his mistress, showed up at the state funeral in honor of him. Now, were the French prepared to accept such a very interesting double life?
It's not new, as you mentioned, thank you. But the new thing now is the information can emerge very quickly thanks to social networks. So it's very difficult nowadays to hide an extra affairs because media are reporting very fast. Social networks are very common for daily people. It's really easy to take a picture of an unofficial couple. But yeah, everybody knows that most of leaders can have many girlfriends, can have extramarital affairs. If you remember President Bill Clinton in America, he has an affair as well. So it's very common, it's not new for people. The new thing is because of social networks,
well,
because
being
of information.
human might be viewed as pretty common for politicians, but the media response, and there's the factor of law in different countries. They are in the West, of course, but in the case of Bill Clinton, he was almost impeached. Right. Perhaps were it not for the intervention from Nelson Mandela, his godfather, he must have been impeached. Well, Hillary, wanted to wring his neck. Right. She said so in her autobiography. But what do you think of the American politics?
You know, American politics, Americans don't know this themselves, but we have a long list of presidents that have had extramarital affairs. The first one, Thomas Jefferson, 1801 to 1809 was president. He actually met a woman, a black woman who was a slave in France, called Sally Hemings, brought her back to his home in Monticello in Virginia. They had 5 children together. The first children, named Madison, actually lived to adulthood. Warren Harding in the 1920s had an illegitimate child. Lyndon Baines Johnson had an illegitimate child in 1950, 10 or 11 years before.
Gosh, you have such a good memory.
We do.
History.
Yeah, no, but and Franklin Roosevelt had a relationship with his private secretary. Eisenhower had a relationship with a British woman who was his driver in the Second World War called Summersby. None of these were come to the press. Even John F. Kennedy, which is probably the most famous womanizer that's probably been in the office, except for maybe Mr. Clinton, was well known, but the Secret Service was collaborating. I think what's happened, though, is a shift from the press. Now, Mr. Clinton was caught up in a legal battle where someone called Paula Jones was an employee of the state, and that legal battle brought all this other stuff to light. So it became part of a litigation. The Monica Lewinsky situation became part of that. So that was a phenomenon. None of this other stuff had been litigated before. But America is not a stranger to the scandal, but we're a stranger in recognizing that these things had happened before.
Is it true, like Henry Kissinger once famously said in an interview to the New York Times, that power is the ultimate aphrodisiac? Do you agree that politicians and other public figures are more likely to be adulterous? I mean, their power politics must be fueled with beautiful sex.
No, I would think so. I mean, I'm sure our Italian friend can talk about Mr. Berlusconi and with all of it. He's been convicted.
Banga party.
Banga parties, 7 years he was convicted to prison. Now he's appealing it. Mr. Berlusconi is a good example.
He was sentenced because he had sex with the underage.
Right.
It's not because of sex.
Underage, but not underpaid.
Exactly. So this is a difference, I would say.
But you're right. I mean, I would say that certainly, power is the ultimate aphrodisiac. I do agree with Henry Kissinger with that. I think the type of person that goes and gravitates towards these types of things are supercharged, and many times they're involved in extramarital affairs.
Let's look at the French law about privacy. Sebastian, why did the Closer or indeed other media in France dare not say anything about the private life of Monsieur Mitterrand, yet their attitudes has changed? And great changes have taken place ever since Mitterrand and Monsieur Hollande fell victim to the media penchant for the private life. And what does the law say?
You have to remember that during François Mitterrand was the French president, magazines such Closer didn't exist at that time. So now the press market is becoming more and more competitive. They lost more and more readers, so they really need to find very exclusive news to attract readers and to get money. And at the same time, the law is still very strict in France, but the fines are less and less important for the magazine. So it means maybe they can break the law and earn money from very exclusive information. So as a magazine like Closer, they take the risk of being fined and attract more and more readers and get money. For example, with the Hollande affair and Julie Gaillet, Closer sold more than 500 million units of his magazine. So that's quite a lot.
Excuse me, Sebastian, let's take issue with the relationship between the right to privacy and the right to be informed by the public. What do you think? Do you think, the general public do have the right to know the private life, or what President Hollande said at the press conference, the first of its kind in the wake of the scandal, that private life should be dealt with privately instead of exposing it to the general public?
Everybody should have his own life protected, privacy, of course. But as a public person like François Hollande, his affair is not it's not a private affair only, because during his night escape to meet his new girlfriend, François Hollande maybe has avoided as I mean, his security was not very strong at that time. It is said that he was only protected by 2 people, only 2 guards. So some people are saying that the security was weak for President Hollande, and that's why this love affair is becoming a public affair, not because of the relation.
Well, that's a very interesting perspective about the security of the president. You are watching Dialogue with Lehman, Francois Hollande, and Rich. We are talking about the world-known affair of Monsieur Hollande, a poor guy who has been exposed by Closer, a tabloid journal. We've been discussing differences between continental Europe and other parts of the world when it comes to the sexual scandal. But you're a lawyer by training.
Right.
What do you think of the legal differences here?
Yeah, I mean, and that was one thing that Mr. Ritchie didn't point out, which is they have Section 9 of the French Code. The Section 9 of the French Code actually gives the right to privacy. So we have a civil law system in continental Europe, and we have a civil law system also here in China. In America, we have a common law system. UK, we have a common law system. We don't really have the right to privacy. I mean, under the Bill of Rights, I mean, certainly I don't have the right to privacy on my tax returns. I have to tell them what that is, but we don't have that right under Section 9. And I would argue that the issues with Mitterrand with the mistress, and Mitterrand with the illegitimate child, and with Jacques Chirac after that, and Mr. Sarkozy with corruption, that they're really protected. And even Mr. President Francois Hollande, he also has this right under Section 9 to privacy as a public person. We don't have that concept.
Yeah, but if I may interrupt, what I think to me is not a legal issue, and maybe it's not even the right of the public to know or to understand whatever, is the fact that all of a sudden, in the past few years, sexual life of politicians have become a political issue. Before it was not. Somebody like Clinton before was brought down because of sex scandal, and in Italy also somebody tried to bring down...
No, excuse me, let me correct you. Bill was down but not out.
Yeah.
By the Star report.
Yes, but it was brought down... Not
was that because of the power alliance between Hillary and Bill?
I don't know.
The alleged power alliance.
Yeah, I mean,
the power partnership.
I tend to agree with you. I think if the wife piled on in a bad way, he was actually impeached. I mean, so there was but it was never enforced. I mean, it was never went through. But I agree with you. It was down but not out. It was gravely humiliating, and most people would be curled up in a fetal position.
Exactly.
But his popularity may have been improved among French women. Okay.
Well, I think Bill Clinton's popularity actually increased a great deal even after this, and Kennedy is one of the most admired presidents of all time. And
actually in Italy, this is also true. I mean, Berlusconi actually gained after the Bunga Bunga scandal, didn't lose out of the Bunga Bunga scandal, but somehow someone still uses sex scandals to try to bring down some politician. It doesn't work.
Yeah, but Mr. Berlusconi did a funny thing. His joke was, he said, if you take a poll of Italian women, whether you want to have sex with me, he said 30% would say yes, and 70% would say, what, again? So, I mean, he actually made light of it and made it to his favor.
Well, Sebastian, don't you think it's a major issue that it's a hard decision for President Hollande to decide who should be the first lady that he take to the White House during the next state visit to Washington? Gaget or the current first lady?
I'm not François Hollande, so I don't know who is the best first lady, first girlfriend.
First come, first served. I'm joking. But what do you think of this tough issue? Now, do you think the current allegation about an affair for President Hollande is something about whether he's human or deceitful? I mean, someone who is not loyal to his wife, could we trust him as a senior politician?
I think it's not related. If you look at Germany,
the French are so ready to forgive, right?
No, if you look at Germany with Gerhard Schröder was said to be a very great politician, a very great chancellor for Germany, and he was married 4 times. So can we say because he had 4 different wives, he was not a good politician?
Well, historically, it was never the case. Historically, it was never the case. Thousands of years of history. I mean, look at China. Many concubines and still great emperors. So, I don't think the two things.
Chen Tiger produced a movie called Pharaoh and My Concubine.
Well, Mr. Reagan was the first one who was divorced, and so it was not accepted up until that time, and it certainly did not hinder Mr. Reagan at all to become president. But that was, again, I see a shifting in the public opinion, a shifting in perception of having a divorce and having extramarital affairs. And I think, like has been said before, Mr. Clinton's situation has brought it to the forefront with America. But I also see it as a tool for the enemies to try to destroy their political foes. I mean, so that's also playing into this, as well as technology. I mean, again, in American law, in the Bill of Rights, there's no allocation for privacy. In the Constitution, there's no allocation for privacy. In the UK, where we have the common law system as well, they have something called a super injunction, and there's 53 of these, and they're so secretive, you get them from the High Court, that you can't even say that there's a super injunction in place. This is to protect privacy.
Perhaps we have spent too much time discussing the issue of honesty for politicians, because we have very serious cultural differences between the two sides of the Atlantic Ocean. Let's look at the role of paparazzi, which killed Princess Diana in Paris. Now, one paparazzi reporter in China said famously quite a few years ago that the relationship between the celebrity and the paparazzi is very much like water and the boat. The water could lift you up. It could also make you capsize. The celebrity deserves the right for being scrutinized, for being questioned by the demanding media. What do you think of the role of paparazzi?
Paparazzi, as we are both journalists, we know that these are a special kind of journalists. And I talked to the actual original paparazzi in Italy.
And it's an Italian word.
He's an Italian word. He's an Italian guy. And I talked to him, how does it work? And he told me that over 90% of the times he was actually told by the victim where this guy was or where she was or what she was doing. So there is a very tight connection between this kind of photo reports and the person who wants to be in the media. But also in this case, there are cases in which the actual paparazzi shouldn't be paparazzi again, but then it's hard to control. And I think it's the case of the politicians, as our friend was saying. In some cases, in many cases, now some people, some political enemies try to use sexual scandals to take a stab at their political foe.
In Chinese, it's called 就恶心你的政敌, just to make him feel not so great in the eyes of the general public. Now, what will happen to Closer, the gossip magazine, Sebastian?
François Hollande said that he won't shoot the Closer magazine because he said he's the French president and he doesn't want to support this kind of press. But Julie Gaillet will shoot the magazine. Pretty sure that Julie Gaillet will win the trial because most of magazines like Closer will be fined. But for the magazine, it's quite a good deal because they will be fined, but they sold so many units of the magazine. And even in China now, we are talking of Closer. So it means that it was a good deal for them.
The next question is very much about the image of France at large. One after another, sex scandals broke out concerning politics in France, and yet majority in that country, in continental Europe, don't take it very seriously. What do you think of the image of this country, whose French back in 1789 shocked the world and introduced democracy and human rights?
No, well, I think to me at least, I see that this thing has been debated in Italy because it has, of course, repercussion with Berlusconi, and some people say, well, after all, Hollande is like Berlusconi. I think there are big differences between the two men, and also the big problem with Hollande is not the scandal, but the economy, which is not doing well. So I would say personally, it is actually helping Hollande now, is not running against him.
They say politics is Hollywood for ugly people. So I mean, to a certain extent, this is allowing, I mean, him to get a lot of exposure, good or bad. I mean, sometimes they say that, no press, is the worst thing. Was it Oscar Wilde? The thing is about saying bad things about you. The only thing worse is no one saying anything about you at all. And so this to a certain extent may help. I mean, there's no one quite like Mr. Berlusconi, of course, who's brought and said so many very interesting things for us to all talk about. Mr. Putin is another one. But this may indeed help them.
But the Russian media seem to be very silent about, very quiet about Vladimir Putin's private life. They are not allowed to have gossips about what happened to Putin after the divorce, right? Now, towards the end of this very interesting program, let me quote what Francois Mitterrand said, the late French president, saying in Chinese festival. I would encourage my domestic viewers to have a clear idea and picture about how the French look at the issue, the sensitive issue. 如果法国也像美国那样追究性丑闻的话，我们所有的部长都会辞职。Let me translate it into English. Should the French government investigate sex scandals the way the Americans do, then all of his ministers must have been resigned as a result. With that, we come to the end of this discussion about the privacy in France. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.